Tired of the 9 to 5 grind and ready to take charge of your future? Today, we're joined by Adam Goldman, a top franchise coach who's here to show you how to franchising can be the ultimate exit strategy from corporate America. He will debunk common franchising myths, share the top skills of successful franchise owners, and explain why franchising is a great investment, even for real estate pros. Plus, he's offering a free consultation to help you find the perfect opportunity. So stay tuned. This episode is packed with insights you can't afford to miss. Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyan, your host, best-selling author, lead machine coach, and the founder of the Lead Machine Marketing Group and Mastermind. And I'm dedicated to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream life. So whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyan, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
So, Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
A pleasure to be on, Paul.
Yeah, we were talking before the show how it's cold in Texas and it's cold in Michigan. I think it's cold just about everywhere.
We have an Arctic blast.
Yeah. My friend and client in Boca Raton, Florida, he's a golf pro, and he had cancellations because it was 54 degrees, and that's too cold in Florida when it's 100 degrees. So it's probably similar like that.
Well, it's actually, I mean, look, it was 31 this morning, and my kids, who are Texans, right, saw their first snow of their life, and they were ecstatic to build some snowmen.
Yeah, that's great. So franchising isn't something that I'm real familiar with. I like the idea, and a lot of people I talk to have left corporate or are in corporate and considering a second act. They're going into retirement. I'm doing the same thing. So what was the spark that touched off your journey into franchising, and how did you get where you are today? And just a little bit about yourself.
So I guess I'm aging myself in that after the last Great Recession, which was 2008, hard to believe that was 16 or 17 years ago, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I owned a real estate investment company and was able to buy property at a reduced rate after 2008. But I found that in 2009 and even in 2010, my leads were kind of drying up, and I kind of needed something else to do. So talked to a friend who was in the franchising space, and she's like, wait a second here, Adam, you should really look at these brands. And I didn't really know much about franchising. I thought it was McDonald's and hamburgers and owner operator and flipping in the back, or Liberty Tax, where you're just kind of having someone that's dressed as the Statue of Liberty that's twirling a sign on a street corner. And she really kind of educated me on franchising. And she's like, wait a second here, you should look at this business. She gave me 3 options. The one that I gravitated towards in 2010 was an office cleaning master franchise. Where I found different office buildings to clean, and also franchisees in Houston that were the ones cleaning the businesses with their employees. And that really resonated for me. I ran that business for 8.5 years, and I got an unsolicited offer from my neighbor. And they said, hey, we're trying to expand, and we'd like to potentially invest in the Houston franchise market, and decided to exit. And came into franchise coaching myself. I just kind of stumbled into it. And I realized that I really, really like making matches, right? Meaning I have different franchise brands that are my clients, and I'm trying to connect them with different candidates that are looking at different franchise brands.
Right. And so is that more fun than operating your own franchise like you were doing in Houston?
So great question. I mean, look, I'm the kind of person that likes to start things. If you look at my disc profile, I'm a starter, but I'm not necessarily a finisher, right? So love the beginning of a business, right? Where if you lose a client, it doesn't really affect things, but all of a sudden, if you're like have hundreds of clients, and by nature you're going to be losing X% of them every month, it becomes a big deal. You lose all this money. So much more exciting at the beginning of a business for me than at the end from that point of view. To make a long story short, I do really enjoy what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like that with projects too. I just love to get started in one, and then you stall. You get stalled because you've got to wait for someone else to, because I'm an action taker. I want things moving ahead. So how much do these, now I've heard these McDonald's and the ones that you mentioned, I've heard that the owners really don't make that much money. And so how much money can a franchise make?
I get asked this question all the time. And it's kind of the same question, Paul. Hey, how much money do business owners make?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is, let's kind of talk about how much you can't make, right? Or if you're unsuccessful, you could lose money. You could lose your whole investment. In fact, there are no guarantees. If you're a bad operator of even the most successful franchises like Chick-fil-A, you're going to make no money at all. But I mean, I've been doing this now for 8 years, right? And what I can tell you is successful franchisees can make a lot of money, right? And the way they can make money is they're able to scale the business. They have to be business savvy. So I don't mean to give you an answer that's just kind of not very exact. You can make a lot of money in franchising if you're good at in operating the business and you're connected with the right franchise brand.
And so what makes a good franchise owner then?
A great franchise owner is anyone that potentially can follow the system and is a good cultural fit for the franchise brand. I think people tend to underestimate culture when it comes to franchise systems.
Yeah. In what way? What do you mean by culture?
Well, let's talk again about Chick-fil-A, right? I mean, you can be an amazing person. They're very selective. They select 1 out of every 20,000 people that apply to be a franchisee, but they're looking for a specific type of person. One of the big benefits of franchising that people don't really talk about very much is what you get as a network effect, right? McDonald's started their McFlurry and their Egg McMuffin from innovations from their franchisees. I have brands that actually have guilds or buying collectives in different markets. You get a lot of value in a good system from other franchisees. And if you don't fit into that culture, you're probably not going to succeed as well as in another brand where you do fit in with the other people.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so how much does it cost to invest in a franchise? I mean, it depends. It depends.
No, I'm actually going to give you a range. I'm going to be a little bit more specific. Let's divide franchises into brick and mortar retail and non-brick and mortar retail. And let's give examples. So if it's a storefront like a McDonald's, it's over $1 million. Now there is financing available. On the lower end, when it comes to storefronts, a boutique fitness with a small footprint, that might be about $250,000 all in, right? On the lower end. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about non-brick and mortar businesses. So I'm not saying that I connect this with you in Michigan per se, but here in Houston, Texas, we have a lot of mosquitoes, right? So if you had a mosquito spraying business that's high profit and also recurring revenue, that might be $125,000 all in, right? So that my range is anywhere from $125K all the way to $1 million plus, depending on the business.
Right. I hadn't thought about the service-based business. Are there any digital-based business franchise, or is that just a completely different model?
So look, I mean, I connect my investors with brands that are in 75 different industries. There's a computer component or IT component to all franchise brands. Many of them are IT companies that just happen to be in X industry, right? That might be their unique selling point. Taking a mom and pop industry and just kind of using AI or using other IT related concepts to better the system. But if we're looking for straight IT, right, there is actually a market for people that do IT consulting for businesses, but that's very sales heavy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of my best friends, he's my bass player in my band. he's he he started out as a solo, and he's not franchising yet, but he eventually started working on his business instead of, he still works in his business, but he started working on his business, and he got mentorship and coaching, and his business has really skyrocketed. And that just reminds me of how Ray Kroc started out with McDonald's, and he had that systematic way of doing everything. So everything, there was a system for everything, there was training for everything. And so there are good franchise brands and there are bad ones. And so you've kind of curated the ones that work well, that work well, that have good systems. And so what would an owner looking for a franchise be looking for? You said culture, but wouldn't systems be really high up on the list?
Absolutely, because you're buying a brand and you're buying a system, right? So,
Yeah.
look, the way you find out if the system's good or not is by asking franchisees, right? So, and I tell all my candidates that when you're looking at franchise brands, you're going to find three types of owners. You're going to find the underperformers, you're going to find the average performers, and you're going to find the overperformers. And the whole goal of doing an investigation is to find these people that are overperforming, that are like you in a market like yours, because that means that you can do it. And whenever I frankly have a candidate that sees someone that's an underperformer, I say, great, we talked about this before, that you would potentially see these underperformers. In fact, you always see these underperformers, no matter which market it is. Find that overperformer like you.
Yeah, and it's the same with any business. You're going to see the same thing. The mosquito guy. We've got a lot of mosquitoes in Michigan, too, because there's a lot of lakes and rivers and whatnot, and so marshes and things. So yeah, it's going to be the same thing. So what identifies a specific franchise is going to be a good fit?
So look, what I would say is this: with my candidates, my goal is to give them three different brands that are different than one another, right? I feel like I'd be doing them a disservice if I gave them Chick-fil-A, Cane's Chickens, and McDonald's as my three brands, right? I kind of want, people tend to gravitate towards different business models, right? So
Yeah.
I typically like them to see different things. And when I give them, it's based on characteristics. When I dig deep with my candidates, it's like, hey, what I'm looking for is, I'm the kind of person that likes to sell, or I don't like to sell, or I want to do this business semi-absentee. I'm not ready to leave my day job, right? Wherever that might be. So I have these characteristics that I'm trying to match them with, right? Because some brands require you to be an owner operator. But what I think is kind of like this 3% of, I might give them three identical characteristic brands that might be in different industries. And it might be this last 3%. Maybe someone has a passion for music, and one of the three that I give them is a music studio, right? Everything else matches up, but they just kind of see this they're just kind of excited about creating a music studio for kids. So that's kind of the X factor. It's more an art than a science, and it's very personalized, my matching service.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about franchising?
Great question. I mean, I think the number one, I'll give a couple that really come to mind. I'll give two as starters. Number one, that franchising is just about McDonald's and French fries and flipping burgers. You mentioned you didn't even think about service brands. I mean, 80% of my placements these days are non-brick and mortar businesses, right? And the reason why is, frankly, people don't like to sign a lease for 10 years and to have a personal guarantee. And they like a quick start to the business. So that's positive about different brands that are non-brick and mortar business service businesses. The second one is, people think that you need to spend millions of dollars to invest in franchises, right?
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I have plenty of great service companies that people can get all in for as little as about $125K, right? So it's just all across the board. I think those are the two biggest misconceptions.
Yeah. And so you brought this up a few times, how you match people. So what's the difference between a franchise consultant and a franchise broker?
I don't even know of the word I mean, I know of something called a business broker, right? I mean, a business broker for me is someone that is there representing a specific brand or a specific company that's non-franchise. Sometimes it is franchise related, and they're there to represent that owner, right? It's almost like a sell-side real estate agent, right? My role is I think of myself as being a one-person eHarmony or Match.com, right? And I'm aging myself with my dating references because I haven't been on these dating websites for many decades, right? But
Yes.
what I would say is I'm here to make this perfect match between the two, and it's got to be a great match for everyone, as opposed to just being there to represent a specific owner of a specific business in a specific territory.
Gotcha. So that's a bit different. So you mentioned loan at the top of our questioning. You mentioned whether or not you can get a loan for a franchise. Is that a good option, or is it better to go with your savings, or I guess it depends, but on your financial situation. But what do you
I
have
hate
say
to
about
always
that?
say it depends, Paul. I'm going to use that again, and forgive
I
me
know.
because I get asked this so much. But look, let's talk about the idea of getting some sort of financing. Many people, what they do is they have a stock portfolio, and they're really excited about the stock portfolio, but they just don't want to sell. They own NVIDIA, and they've seen these huge returns. You could actually borrow against your stock portfolio with many different brokers like Vanguard, et cetera, or Fidelity. That's one way to finance. One way to also finance is friends and family, or sometimes you can do through banks. But one of the most popular ways that my candidates potentially finance and us is through a rollover. And people don't realize this, but without penalty, you could potentially take your retirement account, sometimes even when you're actively at an employer, and allow yourself to, instead of investing in Amazon stock, you can invest in yourself. And I think that's a really interesting option that people really haven't heard of before.
How would that work? That's interesting.
So what happens is you take this existing retirement 401k and you say, hey, look, I'm going to go ahead and take a portion of this, whatever that might be, right? And you go ahead and you sell whatever Amazon stock it might be, or wherever it might be already, and you become, it becomes the 401k that owns your business.
Ah, that's interesting. That'd be a really interesting way. Plus, you could, if you're still working, you can continue to fund it.
Yep.
Yeah. Huh. So how do you know if you're financially ready to invest in a franchise?
Well, look, I can tell you how you'll know you're not ready. I'm always really careful with candidates that come to me with a net worth, right, that is quite low. And they're like, hey, Adam, I'm ready to go, and this is my last dime, and I'm going to put all of it into my business. And I'm really scared about situations like that, right? I've had people that have invested a lot of money, been undercapitalized, and it didn't work out, right? It might be opening up a fitness studio right before the pandemic. What I can tell people is it's got to be, you got to look and see what you have. And I have a lot of people that are ready to bet on themselves, and it's kind of empowering, right? To see these people that just believe in themselves. They're tired of the corporate grind, and they're willing to make this investment, and they do their own due diligence, and they're ready to go. I like that.
Yeah. A little bit more risky that way, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it is risky. And I really am, what I say to my candidates, especially that first year where it's really hard, I'm like, hey, look, this is going to be hard no matter what you think. But I like to think of them, I even tell them to have a silver bullet that they're looking at in front of them. And the reason why is the people that really realize that we're burning the bridges, this thing has to succeed, they're the ones that are successful. They're the ones that do that extra thing that might be the difference between success and not success.
Gotcha. So I'm going all over the place here. What should people look for in a franchise agreement to avoid potential pitfalls?
So look, whatever the franchise agreement is, right, it's not going to be written necessarily in your favor, right? The disclosure document, the purpose of that, it has some important information, right? But it's a way to protect franchisors, right? That's the purpose of the disclosure document. If you're looking in the agreement, the things that I coach my candidates to look for is to see how long the term is, right? And also to realize that it's really not very, it's not typically not negotiable. The one thing that I do tell my candidates is that that's negotiable are things such as territory, because it's not written in the agreement. But, some brands, and look, not every brand in my industry is wonderful. Some brands actually force you to buy equipment or different things from them. So for instance, nothing against them, but Subway, according to what I hear, they actually require their franchisees to buy the bread and all of the cold cuts from them at a higher rate than if you were just to buy it down the street, right? So
Really?
things like that are important to see. That's a revenue source for the franchisor.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, and we talked about a little bit about this before the show, before we started recording, but what about franchising your own business, establishing the model and the systems? What about that? I mean,
So I get asked this question all the time, right?
Yeah.
And people are always asking me saying, hey, I have this amazing idea, Adam, could you help me to franchise this? Or what advice do you have? And look, I was a franchisor myself, right? Something called a master franchisor, meaning I had a brand that was behind me and I had the rights to Houston to set up a franchise locally. One thing that I've learned from being in this industry now for 15 years is that's a hard road, right? People tend to come into this business as a franchisor and think, well, I've got $10,000. I have this amazing idea. I'm ready to go. And they might spend $20K or $30K with an attorney and even create documents in some states. But look, the skill set to be a good franchisor is different than being the skill set to being a great business owner. You need to have resources. And frankly, even if you have the most amazing idea in the world, to actually market that to entrepreneurs is very difficult and very costly. And my experience is that people tend to not have the resources in order to really expand successfully. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest to actually become a franchisor.
wow. And so maybe joint ventures and things like that might be more attractive to someone who's looking for that, doing that kind of business potential.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can also say anyone that's interested in becoming a franchisor, there are certain really great roundtable. You mentioned that you have a roundtable yourself for marketing.
Mhm.
I'm a huge believer in peer-to-peer marketing and peer-to-peer roundtables and things of that sort. I'm a member of a group called Entrepreneurs Organization, and they actually have a roundtable that's national of other franchisors that are emerging. And I think that's a very valuable place to kind of be for an emerging franchisor, to kind of see where other people are at and best practices.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the around the money questions, what are some of the money questions you should ask before buying a franchise?
That's an amazing question, right? Many franchise brands have earnings claims in their disclosure document, right? The ones that do not have it, what you do is when you talk to franchisees, you go ahead and ask them, how much money did you make by what time frame? You can actually ask them this, right? And you create your own pro forma. And I tell my candidates to go ahead and to give themselves a best case scenario, a worst case scenario, somewhere in between. I also coach them to just kind of figure out different ways to figure out how they can potentially figure out how much money they're going to make. Meaning, do they do it based on cost or top down or bottom up? And that's kind of the best way to kind of figure out how much money you're going to make by what time frame.
That's good advice. What about the top 10 skills of a successful franchise owner?
So I don't really,
You touched on that.
yeah. I mean, look, I don't really have like this top 10 list of people of the right kind of person to do this, which is exciting for me because it means that I have so many brands in so many different industries that frankly demand different skill sets. Let's just kind of talk about an overarching theme or a couple themes, Paul. So number one, they've got to be the kind of person that's not afraid to follow a system, right? So I mean, I do sometimes have candidates that tell me, I'm just kind of this entrepreneur and kind of loosey-goosey and I have a hard time following a system, and they say, I want to start selling kebabs inside of McDonald's, and I don't want golden arches. I want gold in something else. And they're probably not a fit for franchising, which is okay, right?
Yeah.
They don't see the value in paying royalty fees and franchise fees for a system, right? So that's one thing that I would say as someone that follows a system. And then I think the second aspect is the overarching theme is people that have business savvy, right? I always get concerned if someone's never been in business before, if they were an art student in college and they have no business experience whatsoever, they've never hired and fired, and they just don't have any sort of expertise, whether it's operational excellence or even sales excellence or HR experience, probably going to be hard for me to find a fit because, look, you need to have some sort of acumen in order for this to succeed. You can't just be, even if you're willing to learn, there's got to be some sort of background and skill to succeed in the business.
Gotcha. And of course, a drive. What are some of the disadvantages? I mean, we've talked a lot about advantages, but what are the disadvantages of having a franchise?
Well, look, one of the biggest disadvantages is that you have to pay royalty fees and franchise fees, right?
Mm.
So if it's not the right brand and you're not a great fit, you're kind of stacking the deck against yourself, meaning you got to pay all this money every month, no matter what, right? Sometimes franchise brands actually have minimum royalty fees, and starting a business is tough to begin with. So many people that have to pay a portion of their revenue just off the top to franchise brands, that's sometimes a tough mountain to climb, especially if they're not getting value for that.
Yeah, especially if they're just ramping up or starting out just starting out. What about? I just came across the title of a book. I haven't read it yet. It's called "Built to Sell." It's about building a business that will run without you, that you can sell at any time. Is that something that you could do with a franchise?
99% of the time, yes, right? And I'm an example for this in that I sold my business to someone inside of my system, right? Yeah. I would argue that one of the great things about franchising, my successful franchise candidates call me and they tell me, "Hey, Adam, I want to thank you because you've gone ahead and saved me money and all the mistakes I otherwise would not have, that I would have made if I didn't decide to invest in a franchise and become part of a franchise system," right? So because of the franchise system, people are able to scale businesses that are otherwise unscalable or harder to scale, which would make them even more easy to sell in an ideal situation.
Right. And having those systems in place is I think, in my opinion, one of the most key components of having a good business, no matter whether it's a franchise or any business, is having a system that can run without you. And if you're the sole proprietor, you're the sole operator, you need to be looking towards that, in that direction.
People tend to underestimate how important systems are. If you look at Gerber's book called The E-Myth, he talks about it when you have a lack of systems and you're starting a business on your own, you become everything. You become the receptionist, you become the marketing person, you become the accounting person, and you're just kind of figuring things out. Look, I'm the kind of person, frankly, I'm great at following systems. I'm not as good at creating systems from scratch, which makes me a good candidate for franchising.
Right. Which is probably why you had a successful one.
Yep.
So can you give us a couple of examples of some great success stories of some of your students or clients?
Sure. So look, I mean, let's just kind of talk about a couple of things. So I have one candidate that is from Washington State, and he has a day job. Right? He's a recruiter, and he's the top franchisee in a system. And what they do is they are doing bathroom remodeling. And the unique selling point of the bathroom remodeling is what otherwise takes contractors months to create, they're able to do it in 3 days. They use AI, they use 3D printing, and it's just a really great idea because I don't know about you, but I hate having contractors at my house for long periods of time. It's just So it's a scalable business that he can run on the side, and he's been ultra successful with this business. From the brick and mortar side, I have a husband and wife in Columbus, Ohio. They're great people. He's a Fortune 500 exec. And he was like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to start a business, but I'm just really busy with my job, right, in IT. And so I connected him with a salon suite, which is something where he's able to go ahead and to go to landlords and say, hey, look, I want to go ahead and rent out space for X. And they take beauty professionals like hairstylists or tattoo removal artists, and they rent it out for a multiple of that. And they're able to actually build this thing up. They're the top franchisee in their system. They've actually decided to invest in dirt underneath. So they actually own the real estate underneath for one of their locations. Yeah. And their occupancy started at 90%. So it's just been an amazing journey for them. And they otherwise would not have been able to start a business because he was so busy with his day job.
Wow. And so I have to ask them what are some of the bigger failures, and what were the cause of those failures?
Sure. So look, I mean, anyone that tells you in small business that everything's going to work out is lying to you. And yeah. I take personally every time things haven't worked out for my candidates, right? For whatever reason, I've had people maybe they have fear after they invest, right? But they don't open for whatever reason, right? It might be fear. And that's always frustrating for me, in that they've invested money in franchise fees, but they've never even opened, right? I've had situations too where people during the pandemic, right? They've gone ahead and they've started a brick and mortar business in fitness, but they've started out undercapitalized, right? And then all of a sudden the pandemic comes and they're not able to open for a few months or whatever it might be. And then they have to close down. And that just really makes me sad, right? Because this thing's outside of their control, but because of circumstances, it just didn't work out.
That's a bummer. Yeah, the pandemic hurt a lot of businesses, especially, everything in person, was affected. It's changed the world. So now I've noticed that you have a book. You've got 2 books in the back there. Tell us about your books. And there's the Franchise Lifestyle, and there's another one. I can't quite read the title.
It's fine. So we'll talk about the one that's not as relevant. It came out during the pandemic, Your Future as a COVID-Proof Franchisee. Okay. And look, who knows? We have bird flu that everyone's talking about, right? So that might be our next pandemic. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But about franchisee lifestyle, what I did is I even interviewed some people in Michigan. The whole idea behind this is, and when I ask Paul, my candidates, what they're really looking for in their franchise journey, the biggest thing that they're looking for me is freedom. It's not freedom from working per se, but it's freedom to work on their own terms. It's not missing kids' softball or little league or their plays or their theater productions, right? And working on their own terms. And so I'm just kind of talking to existing franchisees that are successful in different businesses and kind of asking about their journey and what about their current situation they are able to have a lifestyle that really fits what they're looking for.
Right. I like the interview style. Getting feedback from real people in real life situations. So that's interesting formula to creating a book. What else should our audience know about franchising that I didn't ask you about? Because as I said before we started recording, I don't know very much about it. It's not my topic. It's your topic. So what else should we share?
I think we got everything. I think we hit all the key topics. There's not anything that's like burning, like, oh my gosh, Paul, you did not ask this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that if that's what you want to do, if you want to buy into a system, then, and you can follow a system, and you've got the financial resources, and you're looking for freedom, and you're willing to, you're not afraid of work, then maybe this would be a good fit.
So I have one last thing to say too, right? So people can go ahead and reach out directly to franchise brands, right? Yeah. And when you're reaching out to that one brand, right? I really believe that people are looking at franchising the wrong way, meaning they might go to Hawaii, they see a great Hawaiian ice concept and they talk to the Hawaiian, just a Hawaiian ice randomly, and they probably shouldn't even talk to them to begin with. The reason why I'm a great option to talk to first is I'm taking that heavy lifting of the beginning of this process, right? Which is really narrowing it down to 3 brands that are really a great characteristic match for you. And then we kind of take it from there, as opposed to kind of playing the field or throwing a dart at a dartboard with one that you randomly saw that probably isn't a good match anyway from a characteristic point of view.
Gotcha. So, Adam, as we wrap up, I'm glad that we covered everything we could in our time together. What are 3 things that our listeners and viewers can do today to put these ideas into action?
So first thing is just to kind of ask yourself, right? Most of my candidates, right, they're people that have a why, right? It might be, oh my gosh, I'm just sick and tired of this grind. Or it might be, hey, look, I'm in my 50s, right? Or whatever age that might be, or 40s or 60s, right? And I've gotten laid off and I just don't want to go back to work for the man, right? Or the woman, right? Whatever that might be. So the thing is, if you need to specifically have a why to invest in franchising. So ask yourself if you, number one, have a why. The second thing is to really do some soul searching, to talk to your spouse, first of all, and to see if they're potentially on board for this potential journey, right? Because my experience is kind of like if people are investing in a house or whatever it might be, if you don't have both team members on board and the kids as well, then it's probably not going to work out, right? And my experience is that the fear factor, one spouse is typically different than the other one. And then the third one is just to ask yourself, right? Are there any passions or any things that you're just kind of like to kind of have an open mind and to realize that things are generally franchised that you didn't think about. Things such as kids enrichment, or even things that aren't very glamorous, right? Would you be open to investing in a porta potty and dumpster business that made margins that would make you blush, right? That's the question you need to ask yourself about how important it is to have a high status business. Those are the 3 things that I would say that people should be asking themselves.
Awesome. I like that. And I've seen, I do a lot of shows with my band, and we played at this place called Jacob's Farm, and they had the most beautiful, and also a private party. And they had, I think they use the same company. They had the most beautiful porta potties I've ever seen. And they were just lined up. They were like houses, little apartments. They were so well equipped. They were heated. They had running water. They weren't smelly. It's just amazing what they can do. So I'm sure that was a franchise.
And look, kind of piggybacking on this, Paul, I love businesses that are need to have. I mean, porta potties are a need to have. I ran a half marathon on Sunday, right? We need porta potties for half marathons, right? Senior care. I know it's not glamorous, right? But there's a silver tsunami going on, and seniors repeatedly need in-home help. They want to age in place, right? That's not a business that's not going anywhere as well. So those are the businesses that I really like.
Yeah, and infrastructure. Yeah. So, you have a book, or no, a free 15-minute consultation. Could you tell us about that and how people can get it?
So look, what I promise to your listeners is this, that I offer free 15-minute chats, right? You could book a time at franchiseadam.com or alternatively at franchisecoach.net. And I promise to let them know if I don't think they're a fit for my service. It's just a free 15-minute chat. And that's the next step to take. And my service is always free, meaning if we make a successful match, it's the franchise brand that pays us a commission, not you.
Oh, awesome. And how long does that normally take just to do the matching process?
So, Paul, I mentioned to you that people are just kind of blown away with our process because we're taking the heavy lifting away from kind of taking this universe and really narrowing it down to 3 that are a good match. So, I mean, I have some people, it typically takes about 10 to 20 hours of time to really research and to say yes or no to these brands. And I have people that are a little bit more deliberate, and it takes them about 4 weeks to say yes. And I have people that are just kind of gung ho and ready to go, and they're actually done within 2 weeks.
Huh. Wow. And if you did that, if you undertook that yourself, you could make mistakes. You could never get started.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even worse, pick a brand that's not a good fit based on a whim.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Adam Goldman, thank you so much for being here. We're going to sign off now, and we'll chat for a few minutes. But remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal until the next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyon, and Adam Goldman, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.